Watch what's approaching, the supreme moment. Reality striking closer than it seems, don't it? Go ahead, it's for the taking if you want it. If not, the dream dies and you'll be forever haunted. Then confront it.
Okay, so with the release of the brand new signature pose category from the transforming Gotenks unit, we can actually finally build a full Gotenks team. However, it's not always that great though. The thing is, most of the units are great and it could have been a very fantastic team. However, just one spot remaining where we needed one more unit to basically build a good team. In this current state, the last spot is a little bit reserved for some of the other versions that aren't really ideal to include. So with that being said, I did bring in the fat version of Gotenks. Luckily I had this guy rainbowed, so over the skinny version I decided to run this guy on it. That's really the liability of this team. Outside of that, the team overall is pretty good. A lot of powerful strong units, especially the new Dokkan Fest unit, but again, a really big weakness is having to bring one of those two units. But with that being said, I mean, the team itself is very self-functioning. They're very solid, does really well. The list of units, of course, besides the the new transforming Gotenks, I did bring in a couple other units like the EZA Tech Super Saiyan 3 version, the free-to-play Gotenks and Ghost, and then also the LR Goten and Trunks, as well as the EZA physical type Super Saiyan Gotenks. So all these guys are pretty good. I think if I were to make a minor tweak, I probably would have included the EZA Strength Super Saiyan Gotenks instead of the physical version, but because this Infinite Dragon Ball History event is only one enemy at a time, you wouldn't really see any benefit from bringing in that unit, because for that guy, you do have to have multiple enemies in the battle in order to get that passive increase toward allies. So with that being said, we're just kind of going through it and see how the team overall functions. Of course, the fat version of Gotenks we do have to put in as a floater and minimize as much interactions as possible, because again, at the end of the day, this guy's a real liability. But let's go ahead and talk about the new unit. I don't think I really had a chance to talk about this guy after a fair amount of testing. From what I've noticed, I think this guy's pretty good. The base version really isn't a part of the conversation because you really only see that guy in turn number 1. Immediately after that, when he comes back around, you're pretty much at that Super Saiyan state. And the Super Saiyan transformed state is kind of a weird setup. I mean, it's almost like a gamble, right? A play at chance, really, of how this unit could actually perform. The passive skill is really based on a lot of RNG and luck factors, depending on how many of those passives you activate, of high chances of attack and defense increase. So it really does depend. You really don't see the full extent of this guy until you get to the transformed Super Saiyan 3 state. Again, my guy is only with one dupe. However, the friend lead is a 90% version. So, even at 90%, it almost seems a little bit lackluster at the Super Saiyan state. You really do have to get into the the final Super Saiyan 3 transformed version in order to get the ridiculous output that you're expecting to see. And I kind of like it at the end because you go back to the traditional increases of a flat, I think it was 100 or 120%. Let's check. So it was 100% toward attack and defense, and then you get an additional attack increase of 100% when performing a super attack, and then you have that great chance of getting the additional super attack as well for basically 4 turns from the start of that turn, or whatever the case is. But very, very powerful unit, very solid once you get to that point. However, leading up to it, the unit can definitely come across as a little bit lackluster compared to some of the Dokkan Fest units. I think like the closest equivalent I can even compare this to is probably transforming Cooler, right? Even though the pre-transformed version of Cooler is pretty solid, you're not seeing the levels in attack stats like you would after the transformation takes effect. So, in a as closely as a fair way of comparing. That's probably what I would equate it to. But either way, this Gotenks, I mean, offensively might be a little bit of a I don't know, lackluster at the beginning, but definitely does pick up quite a bit afterwards. I mean, once you get to that Super Saiyan 3 state, you're looking at, at the very minimum, 3 million plus, upwards of 4 million or whatever the case is. So it definitely does take time, but once you get to that point, it's pretty quick. So that's pretty much, I think, my commentary revolving around this unit after testing it out a fair amount of times. I mean, I personally like this unit. It's a lot of fun to run, especially kind of playing with the game of chance a little bit, with all the passive skill waiting for the which ones to kick in. I mean, if you read through it, it's quite interesting because you've got that high chance of attack increase of 50%, and then with a high chance of an additional attack increase of 50%, and then high chance of defense increase of 50%, with a high chance of an additional defense increase of 50%. So a lot of it's almost like Russian roulette in a way, where you're basically not entirely sure how much of the passive is actually active. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to say the least. I mean, I get it. They kind of wanted to change things up with this unit, and I personally don't really have that many complaints. The one thing I do want to test this guy out on, where I think it would be very, very advantageous to have, is Super Battle Road, because even in this Super Saiyan state, you have a great chance of stunning the enemy, which is, I believe, a 70% chance for stunning enemies for 2 turns. That could definitely be very fun to run. Plus, you do have the Gotenks and Ghost, where they also do have a high chance to stun the enemy as well. So if you wanted to run like a super intelligence team on, Extreme Super Battle Road, that might actually be an option to test that out. There's a couple of ways to go about it, and see how the team overall does. If not, you could always go to the other categories that are available, like Majin Buu Saga, of course, Hybrid Saiyan, Super Saiyan 3 is another one. All of those, and Fusion as well, but all of those have their specific categories for Super Battle Road, so certainly an opportunity to test them out on that one. But for me, I think it would make sense to just try it out on the Super Intelligence versus Extreme Tech of the Extreme Super Battle Road. I think that would be something interesting to test out, see how beneficial it actually is to bring this unit. I know for a fact the transforming Majin Buu will be, I mean, honestly, it'll make life tremendously easier, just because of all the different sets of skill sets that unit has. But out of the two, I think for SBR, Buu would definitely be more advantageous, but I think this guy still could provide a lot of beneficial value on bringing on a team. So now that we got the Super Saiyan 3 status finally, and this is when we can start having fun with the rotations and bringing in a couple of powerful rotations of just Gotenks just running amok, basically. All right, so immediately, I mean, it skyrockets up to 3.8 million, and obviously that's on the low side, to be honest. I mean, you can get a lot higher than that, depending on how things are set up. The LR Trunks and Goten, I did want to include them on here, not like I had a choice in order to run this team, but just to see how that unit would do as well. It's one of those guys where they're not included on most of the most current teams, I guess is probably the best way to put it, but any opportunity to test them out, it's certainly a good thing, and I think they're doing fairly well on the setup. The Fat Gotenks actually isn't doing quite bad either. I mean, I figured this guy would be a huge liability, which he is to some extent, but the unit's not demolishing the team HP to a very severe degree. That's probably partially due to utilizing this guy as a floater, so that probably helps quite a bit. But either way, it could be a lot worse. I do also like the physical version of Super Saiyan Gotenks as well. One of my, favorite units. I would say, not from overall strength or anything, but in terms of personal favorites, that guy's definitely in, I would say, my top 10, I think. Not too bad of a unit. Alright, so the second unit's transforming. We're going to do something a little bit interesting here. Instead of the tech version being in the first slot, we're going to go ahead and put this guy in the very first slot. We are going to use an item, but I just want to kind of see how much the defense is going to make an impact. I mean, you do have the 100% increase to defense, but I'm not quite sure how much of an impact this will have here against a type disadvantaged enemy. And 25, roughly about 25,000, anywhere from 20 to 25,000, but it's gonna probably take a lot of hits here. Yeah, 272,000. So maybe not a good idea to do that. I mean, the fact that you can get 2 super attacks per rotation, at least the second one is with a great chance for the 4 turns from the start of the turn. So it's frequent enough, but if the crits activate, you're looking at a pretty substantial amount of damage just from one unit alone. So it obviously makes sense as to why they made the transforming restrictions as limited as they are, but with that being said, you're really not going to see this guy unless you're going through battles like this. You might actually be able to see it in Super Battle Road, depending on how the battle plays out. I don't know, depending on how good your team is, it might be a little bit limited. But, who knows? I haven't tested it myself, so I can't say for sure. But it's probably a little bit limited, I would say. We're just going to keep going because the last one is a tech type, so of course these guys will have type advantage, so it'll be interesting to see how they do against a tech version of Perfect Cell. Yeah, definitely makes things go a lot smoother. It just takes a little while to get this guy to that point. That's the only problem. I think it's a pretty decent rotation here. Yeah, the tech versions in the middle probably is going to take some damage here, but the other 2 are type advantage, so we should be able to survive it pretty easily here. I was really hoping he would take that hit, but just out of curiosity, but evasion works as well, but it is what it is. Alright, and then the other version should be coming up on the upcoming rotation, and then it might be a wrap after that. Pretty much annihilated a good amount of HP, and that the Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks that you just saw is my version with only 1 dupe, so this will be the 90% version, so I expect definitely a lot more damage than that one. So yeah, Cell might not even last this rotation, honestly. But I guess with that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video of a team filled with the Gotenks variation units. Again, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.